Good morning. I'm Mariel Vera, and I will be presenting my thesis titled Development and Validation of Audiobook in Afro-Asian Literature. For the introduction part, reading is critical to one's academic achievement. It is one of the most crucial abilities that anybody should be able to learn. It is a must for all learning areas. Studies explained that among English proficiencies, reading has the most important role for students' learning success since overall activities of learning are started with and developed by the reading activity. However, in a 2018 global survey called Program for International Assessment or PISA, among 600,000 students worldwide, Filipino students around the age of 15 got a rating of 340 points in reading comprehension, lower than the average of 487 points. Consequently, in the said study, the Philippines ranked last among the 79 countries. However, during the coronavirus pandemic, students worldwide shifted from the classroom to remote online learning. According to a study from the UNESCO, even before the pandemic, the number of children lacking basic reading skills was on a downward curve. In 2020, instead of 460 million children experiencing reading difficulties, that number jumped to 584 million. With this, it is a difficult task for both teachers and students, particularly in reading development, because reading is not a pleasurable activity for struggling readers. So as an aid, technology may be used in a variety of ways for different types of learners. According to a study published in Technology Tools to Support Reading in the Digital Age, by using text-to-speech, a struggling reader or disabled learner can hear a story read aloud to them. MP3, MP4 player, mobile phones, and other similar devices are particularly intriguing to young adult readers who are enthusiastic about new educational communication technology. Audiobooks stimulate their imagination while also strengthening their speech communication and writing skills. So these researchers um, studied about the audiobook and its effectiveness. So as the result of the study, conducted by this researcher revealed that audiobook had a positive impact in their reading and listening comprehension. So it proves from the cited uh, research data that audiobooks really had a positive impact on the students' listening comprehension and reading comprehension. Now, in the face-to-face educational setting, personal devices became affordable and accessible during distance learning. Instruction is now possible due to technological advancement. As proven from the cited studies, access to human-read audiobooks can be a reliable strategy for keeping both processes, comprehension and cognition simultaneously. So the studies cited above have proven the effectiveness of audiobook as an instructional material to improve reading skills. It is a tool that has been reported to be convenient and can easily be accessed by the learner during this time of pandemic. Since audiobook is not yet available and has not been produced, especially in the division of Pampanga, the researcher aims to develop and validate an audiobook as an instructional material in Afro-Asian literature. Theoretical framework. This study is particularly anchored on Clark and Pivio's 1991 foundational work on dual coding theory, which describes human actions in terms of how cognitive processes functions on the modalities of verbal and nonverbal representations. Parallel actions of reading with the listening event, often called as RWL, have been stated to produce one's previous knowledge to listening itself. Reading while listening was discovered to help students be familiar with the natural flow of the target language, and most importantly, encourage text chunking for improved learning. Conceptual framework. This study utilized the Research and Development Model or the R&D model by Borge and Gall, 1983. The R&D model with 10 steps has been modified into 3 simpler steps due to the need and context of the research. The preliminary data include the gathering of essential literary topics in Afro-Asian literature. Developing an audiobook by audio narrated recording falls under the development stage, and the validation of an audiobook is considered the final step. So this is the paradigm of the study. The preliminary data, the development, and the validation. Research problems. Generally, this study aims to develop and validate an audiobook in Afro-Asian literature for grade 8 students in one of the public schools in Magalang, Pampanga during the school year 2021-2022. Specifically, it aims to answer the following questions. 1. How may an audiobook in Afro-Asian be developed? And 2. How may an audiobook in Afro-Asian literature be validated in terms of audiobook quality and technical and technological factors? Methods. This study utilized the quantitative research method, which involves the process of gathering and evaluating numerical data. Particularly, this study is a developmental research, which is a systematic study of the design, development, and evaluation of programs, processes, and learning products that need to meet validity, practicality, and effectiveness criteria. So here are the evaluators. 3 sets of validators were selected in this study. The first set was 10 secondary school teachers from a different school in the division of Pampanga. Next one is the 5 experts, specifically the 4 panel members and 1 master teacher in English. And the last set of validators are 5 information communication technology or ICT experts. The instrument, 3 sets of evaluation instruments were used in this study. First, the evaluation sheet for topics to be included in the audiobook. And then second, evaluation sheet for quality of the audiobook recording. And the third one, the evaluation sheet for the technical or technological factor from the DE model. Procedures. Approval from the heads and the teachers was obtained, and conduct of the research was commenced after the consent had been granted. Also, request for approval and cooperation of the teachers was sought through a letter. Upon approval of the request, the following stages were undertaken. First, gathering of preliminary data. Second, development of the audiobook. And third, the validation of the audiobook. Stage 1 for the development phase, the gathering of preliminary data. This was the first step in which the researcher gathered preliminary data to identify the Afro-Asian literature topics based on the Depth Ed Learners module in English 8 to be included in the audiobook. The topics were selected and evaluated as essential or not essential by the first set of evaluators. Using the appropriate instrument, suggestions given by the evaluators were also included in the audiobook. Stage 2, the audio recording of narrated literature. The second step was the development of the audiobook. Using the computer recording set and Audacity software, the researcher audio recorded the narrated literature in a closed and quiet room. The audio recording process took 5 days. Each narrated literature was converted into MP3 format, and the duration varied on how long each literature content is. These were then saved in a computer and uploaded in the Google Drive that can be used in listening to the audiobook. For the validation phase, the audio recorded narration of the Afro-Asian literature were distributed to the second and third sets of evaluators using Google Drive link. By listening to the audiobook, validators used the evaluation sheet for audiobook quality and for technical or technological factor accordingly. After the initial validation, All the suggested revisions from the validators were incorporated into the audiobook. The final assessment of the revised audiobook was requested until it obtained all yes from the validators. Let us now proceed to the results and discussions. This is the table 1, or the development of an audiobook in Afro-Asian literature. The development of the researcher-made audiobook in Afro-Asian literature underwent 3 stages, namely gathering of preliminary data, development, and validation. The DepEd Grade 8 Learners module was the sole reference in audio-recorded narration of literary pieces. The researcher used the evaluation instrument and rating sheet for DE and ODEL provided by Graduate Studies of Pampanga State Agricultural University with a checklist validation sheet of the essential and not essential topics. 24 literary topics from the first to fourth quarter were chosen by the researcher to be evaluated by the first set of experts. After identifying the essential topics to be included in the audiobook, recording of the audio narration of the literary pieces was done by the researcher in a closed and noise-free room. Computers, recording set, and Audacity software were used in the developing the audiobook. The developed audiobook was then distributed to the second and third sets of experts through Google Drive link. After the initial validation of the material, necessary revisions were made by the researcher based on the experts' suggestions and comments. The development and validation of an audiobook in Afro-Asian literature were done after all the sets of experts answered yes in the evaluation instrument. The next one is the table 2.1, the content validity ratio of the number of respondents indicating essential. Table 2.1 shows that there were 24 literary topics included in the audiobooks which were evaluated by the 10 English teachers. As a result, 16 literary topics were described as essential by the evaluators, having met the Loshi minimum values of content validity ratio, which is 0.6. In addition, evaluators suggested 4 literary topics. Therefore, a total of 20 literary topics was needed to be included in the audiobook in Afro-Asian literature. Next table, the table 2.2, the validation of the audiobook recording in Afro-Asian literature in terms of quality. This table shows that the first and second validation of audiobook does not attain the target rating. Therefore, necessary revisions and recording were done. And after the third and final validation, the audiobook garnered all yes from the validators and attained the standard quality of a good audiobook. Next table is the table 2.3, validation of the audiobook in Afro-Asian literature in terms of technical or technological factor. This table illustrates that the initial validation of the audiobook in terms of technical or technological factor garnered all yes from the 5 ICT experts, which means that no revision was needed in the developed audiobook. The agreement of all the validators with the descriptions under the technical or technological factor implies that the developed audiobook is convenient to use and can be accessed by the students easily, as it does not require any equipment beyond what is usually available to them. Now, the conclusion. The following conclusions are drawn based on the finding of the study. First, an audiobook in Afro-Asian literature was developed by recording the audio narrated Afro-Asian literature topics from the DepEd Grade 8 Learners module that were considered essential by the evaluators. And 2, the developed audiobook in Afro-Asian literature is valid as all the indicators or criteria were met based on the validation of the experts. Lastly, the recommendations. Considering the aforementioned findings and conclusions, the following are hereby recommended. First, the developed audiobook may be used for field testing by the future researchers to attest its effectiveness. And 2, The developed audiobook may be adopted by the DepEd as a supplemental material for grade 8 English students, specifically struggling readers during the distance learning. Thank you and God bless. And now, let us let me show you uh, the researcher made audiobook, a sample of the researcher made audiobook.
Makato and the Cowrie Shell, a Thai folktale by Supani Kanchanathithi. Once upon a time, there was a boy whose name was Makato. He was an orphan, for his father and mother died when he was very young. He had no brothers, sisters, cousins, or friends to take care of him. So he had to make a living for himself. He did every kind of work, carrying heavy things, clearing away the forest, or feeding pigs. He never idled. Although he was paid only small wages, he was satisfied. He knew that if he would not work, he would starve. Wherever he went, his employers praised him for being sensible, hardworking, good-tempered, and cheerful.
So that ends my presentation. Thank you and God bless.